This video is sponsored by Squarespace, but I'll tell you more about them later. I've been working on a large tree drawing lately, and there's a bunch of things that I'm doing here, but I haven't been recording the whole process, so I thought I'd do a small little drawing to share with you and to just take you through the techniques that I'm using while I'm using them. Starting off, I'm just taping my paper down. I'm using Archer's 300 gram hot press, and I'm just taping the paper down so that it doesn't move around on the desk. Then I'm going to quickly sketch out the tree and the rock. Don't worry, I'm using a reference here from one of the older drawings that I did. I'm going to dip a large brush into some graphite powder and then just give the page a very light dusting with graphite powder so that I can pull some highlights back out with my kneadable eraser and start to build up some volume if I need to. I then use some 9B graphite powder that I've ground down and a brush to sketch the features. I do this because my style of drawing relies on me preserving the integrity of my paper, and using a pencil directly can begin to introduce some friction and pressure which can affect the fibers of the paper. So applying graphite like this makes it much easier to erase, and using a brush is a little bit of a thicker tool and makes the graphite feel like it's being shaded and adds a bit of volume. I find it helpful to draw contour lines along the roots and branches. This just helps me to visualize the dimensions of the tree. It's not perfect, but it's helpful to get a sense of branches moving towards you or away from you. The next thing I'll do is to try get a sense of how the light is hitting the tree. I'll use my soft eraser to gently pull out some highlights in the foliage of the tree, and then clean up the little bits of debris with my kneadable eraser. I also thought I'd just get a sense of the highlights on the little rock that the tree is growing on. I'll slowly massage the features in, moving between working with pencils, brushes, and erasers, each time getting a bit bolder with the contrast and the tone. I want to be careful not to just rush in with the eraser. I prefer having smaller highlights that have a chance to tell a story with the midtones, rather than just rushing forwards and erasing everything. The nice thing about working with a brush and powder like this is you get very beautiful shading quite easily. Just be careful about making the drawing messy. There's a lot of graphite powder just sitting on the paper here. I'm using a generous amount of powder on my little brush to try and draw in where I think the branches in the foliage should go. I can still lift this out quite easily with an eraser, even though it looks quite dark. To make it a bit more permanent, I'll use my blending stump to go over it, pushing the powder deeper into the paper. I'm doing this because I'm going to brush a lot of this powder away soon, and most likely brush most of these marks away as well. So if I don't press them into the paper a little bit more, they'll just disappear. With the foliage of the tree, I prefer to do a lot of my details with my eraser, but there's some preparation that I need for this. First off, I'm just going to brush in a lot of the volume and the overall shape, doing this softly so I can be sure that I'll be able to erase it as close to pure white as I can. As long as I protect the fibers of the paper, it'll keep its life. As soon as we start pushing graphite and erasing and abusing the paper, it starts to get muddy and your drawings can start to look flat really quickly. I'm applying graphite a lot more generously now, creating the groundwork for the marks that I want to make with my kneadable eraser. I'll give the work a quick brush with this oversized brush to just get rid of all the excess graphite. And you can see just how much of that intensity gets wiped away. Next, I'm going to use my kneadable eraser to lift out some shapes and create some volume. I have to constantly fight the urge to dive into the details here. Often I can get really into a drawing to the point where I can feel the tension in my body. It's not always a good thing, and when it gets a bit too much, Maya's really good at noticing and letting me know when I need to take a break. And now finally I've decided to go in and do the background. Using a graphite blend that I've been working on, it goes a bit darker and is a bit less reflective than normal graphite. I'm going all the way around the drawing with a tiny brush. I'm using the smallest brush tool to try and preserve the details and create the cleanest lines. If a line is sharp and clean, it'll look like it's in focus. If it's blurry, it'll appear out of focus, often in the background or very close in the foreground. I'm actually going to be able to show you exactly how this works when I do the horizon line and some of the leaves in the background of the tree. So for now, all of these lines need to be really crisp and in focus. This can be really slow, meditative work. To do the larger parts of the background, I'm using some cotton wool and dipping it directly into my graphite powder. I'm applying a kind of firm pressure here, but not pushing so hard as to create a patina on the graphite and make it reflective again. I want to try and keep it matte, which will just look a little bit darker. I then took a big brush and just brushed all the powder away, knowing it would probably create a messy layer over the drawing. This layer though will be quite easy to erase, but I need to be careful not to let my skin touch the paper. The combination of the oils from my hand with the fine powder on the paper will create marks that I can't erase. Going back in again with my kneadable eraser, bringing out my highlights, you can see how easily the graphite comes back out. Each time I do a pass over like this, I'm just adding more contrast, teasing out the shapes and the volume. And then I'm adding just a little shadow away from the rock so that it feels like it's floating and a little bit magical. And now I'm using the mechanical eraser to try and pull the highlights back out, getting very close to the pure white of the original paper. I'm using this tool to start getting my details. It still feels like I'm pushing and pulling tone. It's not even close to its final form, but this is the first big step in the way of seeing how the technique will look. I'm using the eraser to create the sharp textures against the dark background, which also goes a long way in making the drawing look cleaner and more in focus. Now I switch back to adding graphite with my pencil, just looking for areas that feel like they need more definition, also adding in the branches in the larger bits of foliage. I'm starting to get into a flow here, working more intuitively, continuously alternating with adding and taking away, gently massaging the piece to the level of detail and contrast that I want. This white mechanical eraser has a slightly smaller tip, allowing for finer erasing. It's still a really clumsy tool though. This is about as fine as I can get with a normal mechanical eraser. I'm constantly trying to imagine where the light might fall on the branches, if they're coming towards me or moving away from me. I'm cleaning up the edges to create crisp, clear lines, and creating small highlights on the branches. Now I'm using a larger brush on the horizon line. I'm trying to create that out-of-depth, blurry feel, and you can see how effective that is in just bringing the subject right into the field of focus. I'm just guessing at the textures of the rock here, adding some soft lines that might be roots wrapping around, and even some reflected highlights at the bottom of the rock. I'm just playing around, seeing what stands out, what looks and feels correct, and I can always erase or work over areas that don't feel correct. And while I'm trying to figure out the texture of the rock, I'm just going to jump back in and work on the leaves of the tree. It's the next morning. Looking at the drawing with fresh eyes always helps me to feel better about it. I can also clearly see the areas that need a bit more work. It's so strange how we can be blind to aspects of the drawing just because we're so close to it, and a good night's sleep or walking away for a while can really help just change our perspective. I always feel a bit lost at the end of a drawing, not quite sure where to go. There are so many things that I feel still need more work, but it's not always clear exactly how to do it. And I think that that's also where this method of protecting the paper really shines. I can play around and experiment, erasing and adding for much longer. This technique is a lot more forgiving, but it requires a bit more diligence in the process itself. I hope that seeing a small little sketch like this come to life can help just demonstrate some of the techniques that I'm really enjoying playing with at the moment. Before I end this video, I just want to give a quick shout out to this video sponsor, Squarespace. I've been working with them for a couple of years now, and they've played a huge role in my career, not only in sponsoring these videos and helping me maintain this channel, but more importantly, early on in my career, I was looking for a way to showcase my work and make it easy for collectors to find me and get in touch with me. And I didn't have time to learn HTML and try and build a beautiful, reliable website, but I found that Squarespace did all of that effortlessly. I never had to patch or upgrade anything. I could register a domain with them and set up an online store. And most importantly, I could design a portfolio and show my work the way that I wanted to. Also, every time I got stuck, their amazing support team helped me out instantly. So if you're looking at building a website, give Squarespace a try. And if you decide that you love them, use this offer code and get 10% off your first purchase. There you go. I hope you enjoyed this slow process video of a little tree drawing. I'd really like to do more of these and just bring you along for how the techniques are developing and changing. Yeah, let me know in the comments if you're enjoying this kind of video and would like to see more of them. As always, thanks for the support, and I'll see you guys in the next one.